Ladies and gentlemen, do not buy the House of the Dead 2 remake. It is awful slop from Forever Entertainment, which will not be surprising to the majority of you if you're familiar with their work on the Panzer Dragoon remake, or the Night Slashers remake, or the House of the Dead 1 remake for that matter. You will know that these people do not care about the games they're remaking. They don't understand artistic intent, they don't know the soul of these games, and they sure as shit don't care about preservation. That is apparent every single time they make something. I see it in the reviews from people like John over at GVG, and yet, stupidly, I keep buying the games for myself, hoping, wishing that it might be a little bit different this time, and it never is. I should learn my lesson, I know, but at the same time, just got a Switch 2, heard the Joy-Con controls for the gyro aiming are better on Switch 2 than they are on Switch 1. I had played through Assault Chain Guns Kilometers on the Switch 1 with my best friend about a month or so ago, and yeah, you're moving a cursor around rather than doing light gun aiming proper. Yeah, you're resetting the gyro constantly, but it was doable, it was fun. It felt a little bit like the Wii, especially that game feeling like Gunblade New York or LA Machine Guns, very much inspired by those. So let's give it a chance. It even dropped, and this is how much confidence they have in their own product, it had dropped from its original £22 from about £15 on its release weekend. And we'd just come home from a family holiday playing a lot of light gun games as well. So me and my son were like, you know what, we'll grab House of the Dead 2 Remake. How bad can it be? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. They have destroyed everything I loved about that game. And I will not be playing this version of the game again. In fact, Forever Entertainment, Nintendo, if you're watching, I'd like my 15 quid back. Let's see if the ad revenue on this video can raise enough to effectively be my refund for this game, because, oh boy, it's rare that I kind of feel strongly enough about a topic to drop everything and do kind of an improv video. As you can probably tell, this is not scripted or structured like one of my normal videos. This is sort of a single take to the camera and then editing in gameplay footage on top. But, I think we've got this weird thing with remakes at the moment where there's too many of them and they're not very good. We've been playing through the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 remakes, and I actually had a really good time with 3. I quite enjoyed 3. And then I got to 4 and I kind of went, oh, this is what people are complaining about. And it's this thing of, if you're not going to do it properly, maybe just don't do it. Maybe just don't bother at all. Now, with House of the Dead 2, there are a few things where it's kind of like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. My main issue with the House of the Dead 1's remake was that it doesn't have a light gun. It's a light gun game and you're releasing it without a light gun. And they've kind of tried to work around it. PlayStation 4 has gyro controls. Obviously, the Switch was the Joy-Con and gyro controls. Not a great substitution, but yeah, what are you going to do? And then the Xbox, I believe, was just a mouse for that version. The PC version ended up being far and away the best way to play because modders came in and rescued it with support for the gun for IR. And it's weird to me that the game is elevated so much by the gun for IR. And we've got other solutions like the Sinden, which has partnered in the past with Arcade 1-Up, and we've had Arcade 1-Up cabinets with Sinden light guns. We've got that new game one that's been on Kickstarter recently. Like, the technology's there. We can have modern light gun games, but people seem to want to make the games without also having to make and distribute the peripherals. So you end up in this sort of 0.001% of people like me who do have a gun for IR or a Sinden or equivalent, and will use a fan-made patch, which shouldn't have had to have been fan-made. It should have just been supported from the outset. To play these games in the way that those games were intended. Now, for House of the Dead 1, I was quite forgiving, because that game doesn't really have a good home release, right? You either have emulation and a gun for IR so you can play the arcade version, which is still the best version of the original House of the Dead, or you're playing the compromised Sega Saturn or PC port, which, I'll take it over nothing. So the House of the Dead 1 remake actually, it's kind of a need for that, right? You could justify that, and you could say, well, it's still not the best version of the House of the Dead. but it might be the best home version, and it does make the game available to a new audience. Okay, fine. I'm not thrilled with it, but I'll take it. And that's not an ideal position to be in, but that's kind of what I still find myself with the House of the Dead 1 remake, and I will still somewhat happily play the first one. The House of the Dead 2, on the other hand, is unrecognizable from the source material in this remake. So they still have not solved the light gun situation. You are still using the Switch 2 Joy-Con or a mouse on PC, and no, you cannot use the Switch 2's mouse mode on the Switch release, at least not at the time of recording. The controls are so bizarre in that there is a button that will turn the gyro on and off, which we discovered the hard way during gameplay. Me and my son playing through it. When you select, so you have to go into the options and actually turn the gyroscope on. By default, it still wants you to use the thumbsticks for a light gun game, which don't do that. Never do that. That's not going to give you, particularly the first boss in House of the Dead 2, you're just not going to be able to get that guy. That is not, and I've made some other changes to that boss, hoo boy. Not going to get you where you need to be. You're going to have to be able to move around faster. At least, on PC you have a mouse. That's kind of something, right? So the visuals are awful. Absolutely awful. They look like AI slop, despite probably being handmade. They still have that weird, kind of oily feel to them that plagued the House of the Dead 1. All of the human characters are quite mannequin-like in their appearance. They don't really emote. They're all firmly in the uncanny valley. There is no lighting. Well, there is lighting, but there's no artistry behind the lighting. They haven't considered the mood, the atmosphere, any of that. The original game actually kind of has a Sega Blue Sky vibe at the end. The way they have done the ending cutscenes, spoilers for a 40-minute arcade game from like 30 years ago, but the way they have done the ending, you can't tell that you're on top of a building. You can't really tell that Goldman has ended his own life by jumping off that building. Everything surrounded him like this weird smog with a lot of blue bloom. There's that Sega Blue Sky that was in that ending cutscene is gone. It's entirely gone. A lot of the game is unrecognizable from the original, and that's really sad. There are sound effects missing. So the second boss, the one that reminds me of a Power Rangers villain, it has the chest that opens. That guy does not make a sound effect when he gets hit anymore. He used to scream like it was like a "ah" every time, and no, you don't get that sound effect anymore. So you're missing key feedback that your shots are even hitting. Being that precise with the gyro controls is nigh on impossible. For some reason, on the Switch port of House of the Dead 1 remake, I believe it was A was shoot and B was reload, or you could use, the ZL trigger, although that got uncomfortable very quickly. On 2, they flipped those around, so if you're playing them back to back, shoot is now reload and reload is now shoot. So it's really weird that would be inconsistent between their two remakes. When you're looking at the options menu as well, you select single Joy-Con, you select gyroscope, and that gives you as close to a light gun as you're going to get on the Switch. And it's this frustrating thing that if you look at the controller mappings, the diagram that comes up, even after you've selected your control mode and 2 players and all the rest of it, still shows you the layout for using both sides of the Joy-Con. You can't actually bring up a diagram or an infographic that shows you the button layout for the control scheme that you've actually chosen. We then came into some issues with dropped inputs. So at times where I was, waving around and it wasn't tracking it. There were times I was hitting shoot and just no bullets were coming out. Reloads were getting missed. There's just a lot of dropped inputs, which was... You can't have that in a reaction, reflex-based arcade light gun shooter. You need that precision and you simply don't have it. So the game ends up feeling really sloppy. Like, unbelievably sloppy. It's quite horrible to play. And it's odd, because there were moments where I could make a precise shot. You know, I could be like, okay, I need to get the headshot on the zombie that's holding that survivor, and then I need to headshot this other zombie that's about to drag the other survivor down. And there were other times where it's like I was given days' notice that a zombie was going to attack a survivor. The bullets did not find their mark, or even come out of the gun in some cases, and there are a lot of things that would be easy with the number of times I've played through this game on multiple platforms, and we missed. And there were times where, you know, my son in particular would shoot a civilian. He's like, I wasn't even in the same postcode as them. Like, in terms of, you know, my Joy-Cons over here, they're over there, and yeah, it was not a fun experience. We both got very frustrated. It was a point late game, because I've added in the unlockables from the original mode from the other home ports, and I'll talk about that more. But he unlocked a toy gun, and it switched his weapon straight away to that toy gun, which was bizarre, because I had unlocked a grenade launcher earlier in that run. It didn't automatically switch me to the grenade launcher, so whether it's just mechanically inconsistent, which I wouldn't put past Megapixel and Forever Entertainment, or whether he pressed a button and neither of us realized, because we can't see the button mappings. He was like, oh, I've got a toy gun. Yeah, that's what this feels like. And I thought that was really succinct. Like, it's just like those accidental little things we say. That actually, like, yeah, that's it, actually, that's the problem right there. So I was quite proud of him in a weird way, sort of slip. But yeah, it feels like playing with a toy, and that you're not really there. And there's a really weird disconnect that they've still not figured out in the controls. And even if we get a Gun for IR patch, similar to how we did for House of the Dead 1 Remake, Forever Entertainment can't take credit for that, because that was 2 years ago by fans. It was a mod. You know, the fact that they're not supporting or doing that themselves out of the gate is kind of rancid, really. Like, you've had, what's it been, 2 years since the last remake came out to figure this out, and you have not figured this out. And there were a lot of little changes as we went through that really irked me. So there's a couple of kid survivors in the original, and you can accidentally beam the kid, right? They've been aged up. They are now very clearly, like, supposed to be about 17, 18. So they've changed that, but it also means, like, when one of them runs out very early in the first level, or not early into the first level, but early into the game, you could shoot over him in the past to get the zombie behind him. Now, because he's taller, he's aged up, he's blocking the zombie. So that is not only a design change, but a gameplay change. And there's now some really odd voice lines. There's a guy who... Because the voice acting in House of the Dead 2 is memorable and iconic for potentially all of the wrong reasons. And it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't things, right? Because if you keep the original voice acting, oh, that sounds so bad, how can we still have that today in 2025? Because it's the original, because it's our memories, because they're memes, because it's hilarious. You can't touch that. Or you do, you know, a professional new dub, and you go, okay, yeah, I can see it's a different take, but they're taking the role seriously, and it's lost that campy B-movie feel, and that cheese factor, but we can respect it. That's not what we get. We get amateur hour. And, like, this is worse than having Kickstarter backers voice characters level of poor delivery. In particular, there's this one guy, note to myself, played a clip when I'm editing this. Again, it's sort of a one-shot improvised ramble to the microphone rather than my normal structured written reviews, because I just had to get my thoughts out, because I'm incensed after playing it. I'm really, really frustrated having just played it. And he comes out, and he's like, oh, my friends went inside. I told them not to. And it is possibly the most poorly delivered voice line I have ever heard in a video game. Let me just play. So this is the original.
My friends went inside, but they're not back yet. I told them not to go,
Okay, and this is the new version.
My friends went inside, but they're not back yet. I told them not to go.
That is about as unforgivable as taking the sort of monotone, very casual Goldman that we all know and love, and giving him an accent, like a southern accent, for some weird reason. And also props to John from GVG again for pointing this out. They forgot to credit the voice actors. I kind of saw that in his video and thought, surely they're going to patch that straight away. Nope. I played it today. It's still in there. Today being the 11th of August at the time I'm recording. And no, it's still there. It just says question mark, question mark, question mark for the credits. That's insane to me that actually gets into a release build. That's wild. It shows how little care went into this. Now, my biggest issue... Oh, before I get to the biggest issue, there's one other change that really irked me. So, the first boss is already debatably the hardest boss in the game, bar maybe Magician. And he's flying around, he's got the big armor there. And the trick is, when he shouts, "Go, Carl!" he pops up briefly behind the big lumbering armor. It's like, bam, straight there while he's giving the command. Because it's when he slows down the most, it's when you can get the shot in the most. I mean, you can take pot shots as he's flying around. Your likelihood of hitting him is pretty goddamn slim. So they took away the cheese strategy of that. So now if you can hit him maybe the first 3 times, but now he sort of like just barely pokes his head up, goes, "Go, Carl!" and he dips back down. And you can't get the shot in. So now that boss becomes the hardest boss in the game by a mile, because you don't actually have what may well have been the intended safe method of taking him out. And that's insane. And his voice as well, it used to be quite this high-pitched, screechy, like he was an imp kind of thing, like gargoyle-y, and he sounded like that, right? It was really kind of nails on chalkboard, but, kind of fitting. No, he's so kind of flat now. It's actually hard to make out what he's saying in some scenes without the subtitles. Subtitles that, by the way, at certain points in the game, don't actually match what the characters are saying. Although after the what happened in House of the Dead 1, that little subtitle snafu, not entirely surprising, like their track record here. I think this goes back to Night Slashers, and that they took an arcade game, right? Gorgeous pixel art, absolutely beautiful. Not had a home release as far as I'm aware. And they replace all of that gorgeous hand-drawn pixel art with, sort of traditional frame-by-frame hand-drawn animation. And it just looked soulless. It had a completely different vibe and atmosphere to it, if it had an atmosphere at all. And it took arguably the most appealing part of Night Slashers and just completely removed it. It wasn't there anymore. We did not... just awful. Absolutely awful. And I get the same feeling throughout this House of the Dead 2 remake. There is less contrast. It's harder to actually make out visually important information, such as locations of survivors, locations of enemies, types of enemies, weak points, that kind of thing. Much harder to discern. There's less color variety, so everything just kind of looks drab the entire way through. There are some really bizarre lighting choices. I don't know what's meant to be casting this big green light by G now, but there you go, it's there. And it's just a poor showing all around. Just completely disrespectful to the game. And like, with House of the Dead 1, kinda, yeah, fine. It is the best option we have. It's still not a great option, but it's probably the best option we have. House of the Dead 2, okay? We have had 4, by my count off the top of my head, 4 arcade-perfect home releases, okay? We've had the PC version, we've had the Dreamcast version, it was unlockable in the Xbox release of House of the Dead 3, that's another one there, and then we have the Wii release, which is House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return. And the Wii release, using a Wiimote, very similar tech, really, to what they're trying to do with the gyro. And that aim works so much better. It's so much easier to make the shots you need to make, to react in the time you need to. It is visually beautiful. Grab a Wii, grab a Wii U, grab House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return for like £6. You get a better version of House of the Dead 2 than they're trying to sell you for £20 right now. Better controlling, better looking, better sounding, better everything, right? And you get House of the Dead 3 on top. Like, if you're going to play House of the Dead 2, that's the way to play it, not this awful remake. Now, House of the Dead 2, so the best way to play it still, for me, is with the Dreamcast, a CRT, and a light gun. That is not a setup many people have. I respect that. That's fine. But I do think the Wii is fairly cheap to buy. It's fairly easy to hook up to a modern TV. You can get the Wii Wiimotes. That's much less of an issue. The Wii version you should be able to get hold of and play. And that's what I would tell you to go for. Because this is shit, ladies and gentlemen. And I will probably do a deeper dive into just the deluge of remakes we're getting. The good, the bad, the ugly. I would have even taken like the Tomb Raider remasters and even Halo Anniversary for its issues. Give you the option to switch between the remade graphics, which in Tomb Raider's and Halo's cases are actually quite nice, and the original graphics. If House of the Dead 2 Remake had that toggle, I would use that toggle. I will give it some credit. It's still got, although it's done really weirdly, it still has the bonus modes from the Dreamcast, Xbox, and Wii versions. So you've still got the boss rush, you've still got the original mode, which is now the default, and in original mode you can like unlock grenade launchers, and then you can unlock modifiers like extra damage and extra credits and all the rest of it. You can find health items more easily, new costumes that you can wear and change into. That's all there. That is from, as I say, the previous console releases. They also had those bonuses. Laid out in a really weird menu, though, that most people might not realize that the training mode, the boss rush, etc. exist. So you've got the main menu, and then you have to press L or R to switch to another main menu, where the only difference is that instead of new campaign, or continue campaign, it says boss rush or training mode. I don't know why they couldn't have just taken those two options and added it to the menu they already goddamn had. So it's hard to give too much credit because they're not new modes. We've had these before in previous releases. I will give them credit for including it, because knowing Forever Entertainment's track record, I could have quite easily seen them just porting the arcade game as it was with infinite credits and go, there you go, that's it. We've made it look like shit, we've made it play like shit, we've taken out all the extras you had in the previous releases. That'll be £20, please. At the very least, they kept those additional modes in from the previous console releases. And I am really reaching and fishing to give them even that compliment on this release. Just stay away. Don't buy it. It's not worth your time, money, or effort. In fact, I feel like I've put more effort into this video, this improv, unstructured, straight to camera, slap some gameplay on top video, than they did this remake. That's how bad it is. So yeah, needed to get that off my chest because literally got home after a family long weekend away at the seaside, played several light gun shooters at the arcades, and so came home and me and my son went, you know what, we will give that House of the Dead 2 remake a shot. And we wish we hadn't. It's that bad. Don't give them your money. And yeah, if you would like to sort of refund that game for me, you can do so through Patreon, as has been done by these fine folks. They are Crow, Tiny Jericho, Mr. Terry Chaos, Ducky Go, Francis T218, and Deliberator. But yes, these fine folks, or just watching and sharing this video and letting the ad revenue refund the game for me. Just whatever you do, save your £20. Don't buy this remake. Oh, and also if you like this kind of format where I'm just sort of like chilling, sitting, let's get the thoughts out, pretty much as they are raw without any real editing behind it, so to speak, let me know, because that is one way you could see more stuff from me. I do have my hands in lots of pots, husband, father, full-time job, still working on an indie game when I can find the time to. And yeah, I'm aware that Tomb Raider 3 video is taking me quite a while, because it's an undertaking. It's going to be 90 to 100 minutes. I'm currently editing it. But yeah, this would be a way for me to share my thoughts on more games more often, if it's a format that also works for you.